What is oneness? Well, first of all, do you believe in your own authenticity? Do you feel you even know how to be authentic? For instance, do you always do what you say? And do you believe it's even possible to say what you really feel? Is there an inconsistency between your inner reality and the outer world, where the inner reality is not reflected in your earthly experience? Let's break this down to really understand the nature of oneness, as this ultimately lets us experience consistency in our human experience. First of all, let's reduce oneness to a basic equation of coherence. Oneness is being able to think and feel in unison. It's to think, feel, say, and do things equally, meaning you're translating that authentic energetic flow in a way that diminishes any disconnect between your heart, your mind, and your behavioral state. It's being able to take your genuine intentions and translate them into how you vocalize your truth, how you embody your worth, what you show as a part of your identity in your outer experience, and how you treat yourself and your own knowing that you experience at your core. If you're not choosing to fragment from this state of inner knowing, then you're going to be equivalent in the inner experience as you are externally, but very often this is not the case. The cause of all dichotomies in our reality, in the root of unhappiness, relationship disharmony, issues with other people, and even intrapersonal concerns where we're not able to relate to ourselves, has to do with this lack of coherence, which can be traced down to early childhood experiences, because this is really where the nature of the issue lies. So let's unfold the journey of individuation, because it's very interesting how we're all craving integration at our core, but we often don't even know what this means. How can we integrate? How can we create a space of mind-heart coherence? And beyond that, actually integrate with the nature of our spirit. So let's go back to the origin point. You're a child. You have an authentic state of feeling, and you know nothing outside of that inner world experience. Your truth then begins to clash with external conditions, and you start to know yourself based on how you're confronting different aspects of reality. Let's say you vocalize how you feel, and you end up being rejected. Maybe a parent or somebody else in your outer experience doesn't understand you, doesn't acknowledge your needs, puts you down in some way, and makes you feel that the vocalization of your truth led to the provocation of pain. You experienced a split between how you felt and how you were received. And because of that, your mind remembered that you are not validated for vocalizing a certain element of your inner experience. Maybe that meant that you couldn't release your feelings as openly as you had hoped to. Maybe there was a certain aspect of your experience which was not accepted in your environment, which you may have started to judge from that point on. The way that you associate with yourself is in large part due to the way that you were initially received. If in your family, for example, it was not called for to be emotive, to be sensitive, to be vulnerable, and you were brought up in an environment of toughness, where hard work, achievement, and conditionality was reinforced, and maybe you even learned that in order to receive love, you need to be doing certain things in order to become a match to that kind of gratification, then you may start to judge the opposite condition. You may think subconsciously that when you show up openly, authentically, expressively, when you take on creative tasks, essentially the expression of the divine feminine, you may feel resistance in your outer experience. You may simply feel that those internal activities or the alignment with your true soulful state is not going to be something that is validated. And because of that, you start to suppress it. You start to compartmentalize what you feel internally and what you're able to express externally. And that creates a whole trajectory into a future in which fragmentation becomes the norm. So let's continue that journey onward. As a child, you start to accumulate all of these experiences based on how people received you. Because through the process of socialization, you learn the reactionary state of the world around you. You remember every single time how you express, what that outcome is, how much energy is received, how much positive feedback you receive, how much what you feel you're worth is actually treated as worthy in your outer experience. When there's a match between how you show up internally and how you are accepted externally, you start to feel like authenticity is okay. You can bring your full self to the table in certain scenarios or certain qualities that you feel are safe to express because those things were positively reinforced. This literally comes down to primitive psychology. The things that were negatively reinforced, let's say you were punished for, you felt were restrictive in nature, you might have been oppressed or ostracized for being certain expressions of yourself, which led you to hold back or restrain yourself from expressing those different elements of your personality. You may even bring this down to certain key traits. If you're a male, you may think of certain, maybe more feminine qualities, which were not allowed, and you may feel a need to now hold back in the expression of that divine feminine essence because those qualities were simply not seen as worthwhile as you were growing up. Likewise, if you are a woman, you may feel that either the feminine, vulnerable, softer qualities were not encouraged, or the opposite, you might have felt threatened by your desire to perform and to exceed certain expectations because that masculine upbringing was not reinforced within your own being. Because of that, you may now feel a need to oppress these different polarities within your being. And in certain situations, you may show up either more defined or less defined, creating internal resistance because you're simply feeling unsafe when it comes to holding space for all aspects of yourself. This kind of fragmentation can lead to a great deal of confusion when it comes to how do you actually express? Because the obvious question that arises then is how do you really know who you are, what you want, or how you want to express in the world when everything that you learned was relative to others' expectations? You can think of the mental body of your consciousness as this amalgamation of different programs, different expectations, standards, cultural tendencies, ideas, values, the morale of people around you that reinforced either permission to be yourself in certain capacities or not to. And because of that, you now feel subconsciously it is either dangerous to come out of that mold of expectation, or you may feel that you simply cannot even find a way to express yourself in all the ways that you never saw an example for. This lack of safety surrounding individualization is what many of us as adults face. Because if we never received validation for being authentic, then we're still looking for that validation through our different experiences, except we've polarized to the point where we have renounced our ability to even be authentic. This is when we get to the point in our adult journey of having a career, a family, or doing certain things that pacify our authentic state to the point that we can't even associate with our own truth. We may be doing certain things autonomously, like our subconscious is taken over to the extent that we no longer realize what we really want to be doing, how we really want to be feeling, because we essentially shut ourselves down to the point that we are no longer sensitive to the reality of suppression or discomfort. You may be experiencing a reality in which you are in a comfort zone that your mind has created, where you've accrued the things that feel right, rational, successful, fulfilling. However, if you feel dissonance, if you really ask yourself deep down about whether you are fulfilled or not, what you're still feeling is the painful oppression you felt as a small child that wasn't able to find freedom in totality, in self-expression, and in the liberation to personal truth. What is that personal truth? We now need to ask. Because whatever you're still craving subconsciously is either bringing you in closer alignment to those dormant qualities, or it's pushing you even farther away from them. Very often when we get to this point of feeling there is a split between the inner world and the outer reality, the quest for more arises. You may start seeking answers, seeking solutions, trying to disassociate, turn to substances, addictions, relationships, or anything else that creates a pattern of removing yourself from the root cause of painful disassociation to associate more with the outer reality. That outer reality may become so dense in attachment, in possessions, in external meaning, that the internal point may be completely lost. And if that part is elusive to us, then we've completely missed the point. That happiness is not found in more attachment, in more polarization, in more thrilling external experiences. It's in simply being able to create that coherence that creates our freedom and the ability to think and feel and say and do what we are authentically expressing at any given time. To live life in this kind of a new mode requires an elevated state of consciousness. It requires us seeing outside of the box in the prism of our mind's distortions and actually considering, what do we want to be expressing from a soulful place of alignment at all times? It means acknowledging that whenever we feel that split emanating in any situation, we need to be more conscious about what is creating it. If you feel your relationship doesn't allow you to show up wholeheartedly, to be seen, to be understood, it could very well be the case that you attracted a partner from that state of fragmentation. By not being sensitive to your own needs, how can you expect for somebody to be able to meet them? How can you expect to experience unity in a connection, in a relationship, in a friendship, or any social setting if you've deprived yourself of the most meaningful connection you are craving deep down, which requires acknowledgement of your authentic essence and what you are here to represent, which is embodiment of all the qualities that you bring to the table. Imagine sitting yourself down and taking this bird's eye view of your entire field. Everything that you espouse, everything that's been dormant since you were a child, everything that you've even had in your field before you chose to come here. Let's say these are qualities that need to be expressed, especially relative to the condition of restriction. Perhaps because you experienced those pain points of restriction, lack of empathy, a lack of unconditional love, you now need to learn how to give all of these elements to yourself to understand what has been missing. However, you may be blinded to the reality of needing to validate yourself because of the appeal of looking for external validation. This is the way that the Matrix gets us into this loophole of self-defeating patterns and behaviors in which we're constantly seeking more from the environment in order to prevent ourselves from creating the bridge within ourselves. Because ultimately, it will not matter how much we pursue externally. If we're feeling split internally, nothing that we will acquire will be fulfilling to that point, that we can release our egoic control, release the need for these attachments, and simply experience the space of being. The end goal here is not just to experience heart-mind coherence, but to experience consistency at the level of the mind, body, and spirit. To feel such unity and such divine trust that whatever situation you're in, you can find a way to navigate it soulfully, authentically, without false pretenses, without thinking there's going to be a negative implication to choosing to defend your own state of alignment. Which means, for example, as soon as you feel a misalignment, for example, you feel inauthenticity, you feel somebody's choosing to corrupt your boundaries, your sense of worth, you take back your power and you move your energy into a state of awareness to realize that something is misaligned in that situation. You may have attracted a certain situation as a challenge for yourself to realize that you have a choice. You can either choose to create more obstruction, to distance yourself from the state of healthy self-identification with your own knowing, or you can choose to corrupt it. And every single time you choose to stay in a situation, in a relationship, in a job, in any position in your life in which you feel unfulfilled and inconsistent, that is an act of self-betrayal. You are betraying your spirit if you choose to stay complacent, unfulfilled, and in a state in which you lack joy. This is a whole other way of perceiving purpose. If purpose is not just a state of choosing to achieve certain things on the external front, but it's actually the state of internal freedom. Because if you're in a position of true freedom, of unconditional love and joy, then you've found the way to master this degree of self-alignment, which bridges all dimensional planes of your experience. It bridges your ability to be both aware of your physical experience and to feel soulfully connected to it as well, which means that you are integrating your intuition, your knowing, your creative reasoning, and all other aspects of your consciousness which are all present to guide you along this journey. If you're feeling confused and you don't know where to begin this process of integration, consider what currently is missing in your outer experience that you're trying to fill. What's that donut hole in your 3D reality, which as much as you try to find a solution for, you simply can't? That area is where you need to surrender yourself and try to understand what you have been trying to escape. There's some kind of avoiding behavior which is causing you to seek beyond yourself, and that's not allowing you to achieve the coherence that you want in the outer plane. The outer plane you can think of as simply a reflection of that innermost aspect of you that's seeking inclusion, that's seeking connection. Very often when we don't know what we want, but there's like this itch that we cannot get rid of, what we're really seeking is that permission that we can only provide ourselves to experience the relief of choosing to allow soulful alignment. You may even feel some guilt or shame arise when it comes to giving yourself permission to release these layers, these inauthentic facades, and to simply give rise to authentic expression and self-love. Because if that's not something that you've experienced, you are still subservient to the generational program that created that resistance in the first place. You may feel some invisible force that is blockading your ability to choose loving alignment for yourself because you think that that is somehow a negative reality. You may feel that you need to be contradicting what you feel because there is going to be a consequence to choosing yourself, to choosing freedom, to choosing the easier path in which you evade resistance by choosing to honor your inner wisdom. However, that feeling of friction with your knowing is what initially caused this entire quest for something other than yourself. You chose to deviate from the point of awareness because of certain people that likewise abandoned their true knowing. And through forgiveness, by choosing to empathize with those souls that informed your field with all of these biased programs, you can better understand why it is that we live in such a narcissistic society, why so many souls are seeking outside of themselves and trying to mend the painful disconnect because they're seeking relief from that same lack of love that they experienced, which caused the egoic reality to form. What we're all seeking at our core is universal in nature. It's connection. It's this degree of unity that lets us simply be. But being comes in the form of so many different adaptive mechanisms that it's hard to even realize which of them are true. And so imagine if you had to right now lose all of the coping mechanisms, stop trying to be somebody who you're not. What would you start doing differently? How would you change your outer reality to accommodate an experience in which you're constantly thinking and feeling in unison, and you're letting your spirit fuel the journey and drive your expansion from an unconditional place of curiosity, love, and integration? If you take all of these factors into account that have created your life experience, you can find tremendous wisdom and knowing in the power of you choosing to accept all that is and to realize that it's meant to give rise to new solutions. Everyone that is afraid of being themselves doesn't realize there is space for their true self in the world, and that is the ultimate power that we have as conscious beings. Realizing that if we fear repression, we're here to set a new example. If we think we won't be accepted and we're afraid of rejection, it's because we house certain divine qualities that are underrepresented in this matrix and that need to be emphasized by us so that we can start to cultivate change in the world. The integrative state of change that the collective needs is contingent upon each of us, that needs to start to honor our ability to align from within in order to create the kind of impact that the collective will thrive because of. So if you ever fear being yourself, or if you actually feel it's selfish to choose yourself and to honor these beautiful boundaries that you can set by choosing to integrate, realize that narcissism and egotism is actually the lack of this. The reason why this falsity spreads like a disease in the world is because people are afraid of their originality. They're afraid of choosing to honor their souls to the point that validation is no longer necessary. And the sooner we accept this, the sooner we are free from even the need to feel the hostility of the matrix, because we empower ourselves to become this fractal of source that is really needed to spark a collective movement for integration. Choose to see yourself as this gift, and you'll feel that the gift you need to give yourself is just that, is loving alignment through self-acknowledgement and through preservation of everything that you were before the world even created the version of you that you think you are today.